afternoon, and welcome to our Glendale City Council workshop. This meeting is for council members to review and discuss important issues, projects, and future council meeting agenda items. It's a work-study session only and allows the council to hear input from city staff. No action will be taken at this workshop, and there will not be an opportunity for public comment. This meeting is streaming live on Glendale's Facebook and YouTube pages and the city's cable television station, Glendale Channel 11. Thank you for joining us.
Try it again. Good afternoon. Welcome to Glendale City Council Workshop Session, November 26, 2024. This meeting is called to order. I believe we have everybody here. Mr. Mellner, are you on the phone?
I am.
Okay, we do have all council members present, so I won't do roll call. You take note of that. With that, Ms. Bauer, if you go ahead and get us in item number 1, please.
Council item of special interest, veterans recognition in Veteranos Park.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council. We have 3 items today for our workshop. First one will be presented by John Kennedy, our Director of Parks and Recreation.
Thank you, Mr. Phelps. Mayor and council, this is a council item of special interest. We're here seeking if there's a consensus for us to move forward with additional research on this request. On October 22nd, Councilmember Baldonegro introduced this CIOSI as a request for the council to consider various veterans recognition efforts, mainly connected to the recent efforts around renaming Veteranos Park and the Heart of Glendale neighborhood designation. Veteranos Park is located on the southeast corner of Ocotillo Road and 54th Avenue in the Ocotillo district. This small park, just less than a half an acre, is located across the street from our Glendale Community Center. This here is a street view of Veteranos Park. A quick inventory: it's a small green space. There's a small ramada with a picnic table with a small grill and trash can underneath. There's one exercise station located in the northwest corner of the park, and there's a 6-foot CMU block wall along the east and southern boundaries of the park. So the request includes suggestions that the council member received from a local group of veterans for some of the following items. For the city to accept a donation and the donated labor to install 3 flagpoles in the park. The 3 flagpoles would be used for a USA flag, an Arizona flag, and a flag for the POW MIA. An installation of a military-themed mural on the east and south wall of the park. Request to remove the park ramada structure, and a request to remove the exercise station. In addition, the request includes some potential activities to recognize the efforts of these veterans, to include potentially a day of celebration event, the unveiling of the Heart of Glendale bronze plaque, and the unveiling of the new Veteranos Park park signage. Estimated staff resources are about 160 hours of staff time. That would include, may include all of these: neighborhood engagement, engagement with the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission, and the Arts Commission for the mural-themed part of the request. And with that, again, staff is seeking direction and consensus on this council item of special interest.
All right, thank you. Questions?
Okay. Mayor? Oh, we're on.
Ian, can you put your briefcase down? Sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm willing to contribute to the consensus on this item for further study. If and when the recommendations come back, if they include still removing the ramada and the picnic table and the barbecue, I just would like to, at that time, know why, if that's the final decision, and if anything else is going to replace them. I don't need to know today, though. Thank you.
Okay, well, you had actually brought up the same thing I was thinking, so why don't we just find out if he has an answer. Do you know why they're removing those?
Mayor and council member, I don't have all the details. The veterans group, I believe, met with Councilmember Baldonegro, and that's something we would recommend doing some public outreach to get more input from the neighborhood.
Okay. Right. Would you know?
Mayor, some of the when we had the meeting roughly a few months ago, it was a small project that I initially heard of, and then as I got there, then they were adding on more and more and more, and it seemed like certain people were having different conversations with different city employees, and I said I think we need to be we need to be a little more organized and mindful of the process. I don't want somebody to tell you no and you get upset because there's a process that we're not following. And so with the help of two informal leaders, I've been helping them with this. In that meeting, there was roughly 15 to 20 of us there, a mix of family members, community members, and veterans. And some of the things they were concerned with that Ramada, it's small. It's maybe like 12 by 12 at the most. I think initially when it was installed, it was installed with the best intents and purposes, but it seems like it's now a shade for bad people doing bad things. Shouldn't be doing that. I'll just leave it at that. And every one of them nodded their head yes, that's one of the concerns. The other concern was that another comment that was added was the exercise equipment. It's a taller kind of structure. You go up there and everyone said, we've never seen anybody use that. We don't use that. It's an eyesore. I think again the best intentions were when it was installed. Unfortunately, that I don't know what the process was back then, and it doesn't matter. But I'm sure the best intentions were there. I think it'd be better served if it was removed because it's on a cement base. Maybe they could put another bench there. It would be in the shade of the trees right there. Maybe we could do something else. Now, that was, again, just reflection of those 15, 20 people that were there. I would like to get more and more feedback, absolutely, for those, because once they're gone, we're probably not going to get them back, and I don't have a problem with that, and neither did anybody there. But, and again, one thing does not get used at all, and the other thing gets used for things we don't want it being used for. So that was some of the input, but I agree, we do need to reach out to more people and get more input on that.
Okay, question? Go ahead.
Yeah, my question was the same about the Ramada, just because, you need shade most of the year here. So maybe, with the group, at least maybe a council member, they could discuss maybe, and the shade structure does look very small, but maybe if they want to have a shade structure, moving it closer to the corner, to the street, where it's not so hidden back in the back part of the park, might be a possible, because if you're going to have a mural and some other things there that people want to come and enjoy, they might want some shade. That's just a thought, but I was curious also about why the Ramada was being removed. So it could be maybe replaced and moved to a better location, something like that. Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And I completely understand that part of the reason they wanted that Ramada removed was also if those murals are installed on those two walls that they're unimpeded by something in their way. But again, in my opinion, as I drive by that almost on a daily basis, and several others that were there that day, they understand that, and I agree with that, the people that are there doing the things they shouldn't be doing aren't from that area. They're long-term visitors, however you want to call it. They're not from there, and so and the shade is there for them to be able to take a break and do what you do on breaks, or what they do on breaks, but not us. And when we're in the heat of summer, every one of those people that were there, we don't go outside. We're not running to the park to sit underneath the Ramada. That's not going to happen. I mean, when they have when people do congregate there on occasion, there's a bench there that's underneath a very, very large eucalyptus tree that provides way more square footage of genuine shade than that Ramada ever would, because of the table that's underneath it. So it's based on how the sun trajectory, it just doesn't serve its purpose that initially I think maybe it did it back then, but unfortunately now it's more of a magnet for poor behavior.
All right. No other questions? We have a consensus to move forward.
Yes.
Yes.
We do. Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 2, if you would.
Proposed 2025 legislative agenda.
Mayor, members of council, to provide staff report on number 2 is led by Ryan Lee, Intergovernmental Programs Director, and Haley Berry, Intergovernmental Programs Coordinator.
Mayor and Council, good afternoon. We come before you as we do each year at the beginning of a new legislative session to seek council adoption of the city's state legislative agenda. The legislative agenda defines the city's priorities for the upcoming session and will guide the city's lobbying activities at the Arizona State Legislature. Each of you have a copy of our legislative agenda and the priorities that we are recommending. We appreciate your experience on the council. We know many of you have heard this presentation several times, and so we're going to go through it relatively quickly, but we also want to be available for questions and make sure that you don't feel like we're going too quickly. So bear with us and please let us know if you have any questions. Haley Berry from my staff and I would like to provide you with an overview of the session and the major themes before we walk through the legislative agenda.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council members. The 57th Legislature's first regular session will convene on January 13th. Let's quickly review the makeup of the legislature for the state of Arizona and Glendale. The previous two legislative sessions have included a Democratic governor and a slim one-seat majority in both legislative chambers for the Republican caucus. These dynamics have resulted in record-setting vetoes by Governor Hobbs, as well as internal conflict within the Republican Party that has required House and majority leadership to reach across the aisle. The 2025 legislative session will include greater splits in both chambers, including a 17-13 Republican advantage in the Senate and a 33-27 Republican advantage in the House. Representative Steve Montenegro, who represents Glendale, was elected as the Speaker of the House, and Senator Warren Peterson will continue to serve as the President of the Senate. There have been several changes for the Democrats since the last session. Since our last presentation, the Democrats have also elected new leadership in both chambers. Representative Oscar de los Santos serves as House Minority Leader, and in the Senate, Senator Priya Sundararajan serves as the Minority Leader.
We put together this slide to show you the notable leadership positions in both the House and the Senate who also represent the city of Glendale. So Haley mentioned Representative Steve Montenegro was elected Speaker of the House. Representative Michael Carbone elected as House Majority Leader. Representative Quanta Cruz as co-minority whip for the House. Senator Janae Shamp was elected as Senate Majority Leader. Senator Frank Carroll, Senate Majority Whip. Senator Flavio Bravo was elected Senate Minority Assistant Leader, and Senator Kevin Payne is chair of the Senate Public Safety Committee.
Each year, we strive to meet with each of our 18 delegation members prior to the start of the legislative session. In these meetings, we take time to discuss potential upcoming legislation, areas of interest for the legislators, and any legislation that we as a city will introduce. We appreciate the relationships that we have built and the openness shown by our legislators to meet with us in the interim. All of these efforts are the reasons why we have been successful in advocating for Glendale's priorities. Together as the council and staff, we have all made it a priority to strengthen relationships and to keep dialogue open with our members, even when we may not always agree.
So, Mayor, council members, one item that's not on this slide is we've hosted 3 legislative tours as well. We didn't put that on there without first wanting to report back on a tour that we held this morning over at the Family Victims Advocacy Center, where we had several of our members show, and including some of our council members elect. And so we've been very active during this season to make sure that we're conducting additional outreach compared to what we've done in the past. So there's some major themes that we want to go through with you as a recap of last year and what we anticipate for this next year. The legislative balance, as Haley mentioned, has grown to the Republican advantage in both chambers. There was a 2024 budget shortfall. So if you recall, 2 sessions ago, there was almost $2 billion in surplus, and the legislature was appropriated to each member some funds to take back to their district. When we came to you this time last year, we anticipated a significant budget shortfall where they had to claw back many of those projects. They either asked for the money back or they delayed the implementation of those projects. There's a little bit of a whiplash because now we're going into the next session with what appears to be a budget surplus. So there's going to be some balancing responsibilities by the legislature and by Governor Hobbs. Land use planning, we remember the many bills that we worked on last session. We talked about those a few weeks ago as it relates to land use planning and housing. Affordable housing also remains a concern. Glendale is on the leading edge in competing for and qualifying for state and federal funding to assist with the affordable housing investments in our community. Also with homelessness, we anticipate that there's going to be legislation introduced specifically after the recent Supreme Court decision with Grants Pass. And so now there could be additional obligations placed on cities, and both sides of the aisle at the legislature are looking at what that means. Also, director nominations are going to return. So if you recall, the governor was having a difficult time getting her appointments confirmed. And so she then decided to make them interim directors. The legislature sued the governor, and they settled out of court on a process for getting those director nominations back to the Senate for confirmation. So now as we look into, now we'll go into our legislative agenda and our priorities. So as we've held consistent with the past few years, we want to focus on fiscal sustainability, economic development, land use planning, military preservation, neighborhoods, public safety, transportation, and water. Water specifically is an area that we anticipate probably the most bills to be introduced. Last year there were over 90 water bills introduced, ranging from groundwater regulations to conservation to housing and agriculture. And so as we really hone in on the challenges that we face with water, we really want to be keen on what are the biggest issues and relevancy to Glendale. Making sure that as water policy is introduced, that we are staying focused on allowing the council and staff to deliver water within our city limits.
If residents are interested in keeping track of the bills that we have identified as neighborhood bills, they are encouraged to sign up for our Legislative Link program. This is a unique program that enables residents to stay informed about what's going on at the legislature and what neighborhood bills have been introduced. Participants receive weekly email updates and tracking sheets that provide them with information on where bills are in the process and what the next step in the process will be. This program is a valuable resource for residents who want to stay engaged in the legislative process. For more information or to sign up, residents can contact our department or visit our website. This year, we will continue posting the weekly Legislative Link emails on our website. I will also encourage everyone to visit our department website. We provide a tremendous amount of information on everything from how state shared revenue works, how to find and contact their legislators and congressional representatives, maps showing district boundaries, and several other interesting and valuable links to resources. We also pride ourselves with transparency and direct links to our lobbying efforts that we are required to file with the Secretary of State's website.
So, Mayor, council members, this concludes the 2025 state legislative agenda presentation, and we're here to seek your consensus.
Thank you, Mayor.
Question.
I want to talk about major themes, and the one of the 6 you mentioned was land use planning. As we know, last year, the state legislature passed draconian ADU laws. And I believe, Ryan, at some point you mentioned that you and a group of representatives from various towns were going to work with the league to try to redress some of the measures within that bill. Have you met at all yet, and what is your prognosis for the future on that issue?
Yeah, Mayor, Councilmember Clark, thank you for that question. We have met. We had a League of Cities intergov retreat this past week where we discussed specifically this bill. What we had mentioned a couple weeks ago remains relevant today. So there remains concern about the affordability aspect for that third or more ADU. There was actually another city brought forth a legal concern that the population threshold of 75,000 only applies to half the bill because it was mentioned in only half the bill. In terms of aesthetics, I don't see a situation in which the legislature wants to deal with or give us back authority over aesthetics, but that remains a priority of Glendale and other cities, and so we'll have to decide how we can leverage maybe some support of other bills and show that we're trying to work in good faith. And then the last one is the short-term rental piece. That's been brought up by other cities. This, as much as we are not thrilled with the short-term rental piece, it's the only state law that allows us to, it's the only, in state law, the only way that we can regulate short-term rentals by requiring the landlord or the landowner to live on site is through ADUs. And so I think the cleanup's going to be affordability, it's going to be population, and then we're going to try to work on the aesthetics as well.
Okay. One other question, follow-up question. The current legislation does not apply to HOAs, which puts populations within a community at a disadvantage. Those who are in HOAs or can afford to be in HOAs are more or less protected. Those who are not in HOAs are fair game. And so I think they exacerbate the problem by creating more density where there's already a great deal of density. Is that an issue that your task force will be looking at as well?
Mayor, Councilmember Clark, that hasn't been brought up to this point, and so that's something that we really appreciate your feedback on, and we'll take that to the coalition.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Lee. As is typical, this update each year is very general in nature, broad themes and that sort of thing. We have at times had more specific ideas that we knew we were working for. For instance, a few years ago, when at Councilmember Clark's suggestion, the council got behind putting a resident on the state liquor board. And I believe that came to pass, and it probably is improving the process and the outlook. The input to the board, is broader now than it was in the past. So just saying, we sometimes have specific things that we're searching to accomplish. And I think that would be helpful to us, as was mentioned with the ADU bill. If we had bullet points on what specifically we're hoping to accomplish. And I know, so for instance, in workshop, we did discuss about the setbacks and how problematic they were, that you could build, in essence, 3 stories right next to your neighbor's fence. And, so are we going to work on that? Do you glean from our workshops the topics that you want to push forward on our behalf, or do we need to have, input in some other way to make sure that what we're hoping for is going to get addressed, at least attempted?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Turner, a little bit of both. We seek your guys' feedback on specific policy issues. Usually in the spring, we put that through the League of Arizona Cities and Towns Policy Committees. So a couple years ago, to your example, the State Liquor Board seat that would be held by either a former or current elected official is something that the council had asked us to work on. Last year, the city council asked us to work on fire legislation for reoccurring cancer. And so at some point, if there's a policy item that you would ask us to pursue, we're definitely here to seek that feedback and to move that forward. In terms of the ADU bill, we can provide a summary of what the efforts are to the council. That's something that we can do, but the feedback that you had provided was something that we had discussed with the coalition. So to be clear, if there's an item that you guys want us to pursue, we're happy to work with Mr. Phelps and the council on those items.
And then do we communicate directly with you about that, or do we need to bring it to a workshop and workshop it? Whatever, because there may be council members that have specific ideas for protecting Luke Air Force Base, or specific ideas for water, or specific ideas for other things. So how do we process that in a transparent and fair way?
Yeah, Mayor, Councilmember Turner, we would appreciate a council item of special interest so we know really what the item is of interest and also the parameters in which we operate, so that we can be more specific in the policy that you're seeking, just to make sure that we don't go out to the legislature introducing a bill that either isn't in line with the city's priorities or could become another vehicle for legislation within the same topic.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. You said something about our obligations related to homelessness or something like that. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, there's Mayor, Councilmember Tomachoff, there's debate between both parties on what the obligation is. What do we owe to that community? That's where the Ninth Circuit came in and said that there was cruel and unusual punishment and that we could and could not do certain items. Then there's an organization called Cicero and others out of Texas that want us to be obligated to sweep the homeless camps entirely. And so there's going to be debate at the legislature on what obligations or unfunded mandates are they going to put on cities. But that's going to cause a lot of concern. Obviously, it's going to create financial commitments to the city, and so we're going to be watching that very closely.
So, Mayor, if I could, so one of those, that bill, wasn't it on the ballot about that if you're, somebody can come to the city and say that they have to be, I don't know if the right word's reimbursed, but there's a monetary transfer from the city to the person who brings this charge to the city. So is that what this is related to? And are we going to take another run at that or amend that? Or I just want to understand exactly what the topic is.
Yeah, Mayor, Councilmember Tomachoff, Proposition 312 is a property tax reimbursement question that went on the ballot. The voters approved. That was in response from an organization to the homeless campment in Phoenix. That has since been cleared out, and the city of Phoenix has been working on that. And so at some point, if there is a reimbursement request or a complaint filed, at some point there's going to be a discussion on, do we challenge that complaint, and does that lead to a lawsuit? But that was in direct response to homelessness targeting the city of Phoenix.
So just out of curiosity, Mayor, one more question. Is this like a 1487? I mean, what is the process if somebody brings that charge to the city? I know a 1487 goes to the Attorney General. So where would this type of a complaint be heard and then validated or dismissed?
Yeah, Mayor, Councilmember Tomachoff, if you don't mind, I would like to defer to Mr. Bailey on this one.
Mayor and Council, I think that's one of the interesting questions with that. I think it's actually going to go to the county. You'll either filed with the county or and most likely the assessor. So while it won't per se be a reimbursement, I think, from city funds, and again, we're still trying to figure out some of this, it'll be, because we actually don't collect property tax, we are not the actual collector of it. I think that's who it's going to go through.
But the penalty is to the municipality.
Correct.
Just the municipality's portion of the property tax.
Correct.
Okay, so what I'm understanding is there's not an established process. This was just passed, and now they're going to have to figure out how it's going to work.
Mayor and Council, I believe yes. I think that's kind of one of the challenges with this, is just trying to figure out how and when and where do you make the complaint, and then who fulfills that, and from an evidentiary standpoint, what does that mean? So, and that may be actually just filing with the Superior Court as well. But I think that's one of the unique challenges that we are faced with this legislation.
Okay, I appreciate that. So could you please keep us informed as this progresses on what the status is? Thank you.
Mr. Lee, follow up on that question. Being that was a proposition, is that a supermajority for the legislature to change that?
Yeah, Mayor, thank you. That's what I was going to jump in and say. Unfortunately, because it's not legislation that's gone through the process and signed by the governor, the only thing that the legislature can do at this point is further the legislation. But if that means cleanup, I think that they would have that ability to at least set those rules, but they can't necessarily wind that back.
Okay. Would you go into a little bit more detail on the supermajority, what it would take to actually override that?
Yeah, Mayor, council members, so under state law, if the legislature wants to make changes to an initiative, changes need to be approved by a supermajority of the legislature. But again, that needs to be advancing or moving forward the initial idea, not necessarily scaling it down. There's those voter protection acts in Arizona.
You have a question? Turn your mic on. There you go.
Thank you. With regard to homelessness, last year when the count and time point was done, it showed that Glendale had a decrease in homelessness. And I don't know if any other cities did or not, but I would like to see something along the lines that if a city is demonstrating that they are successfully dealing with their homeless issue, that they be exempt from a proposed piece of legislation. I know that's a draconian proposal, but I think that would do more to incentivize a city to deal with their homeless issue than the legislature continually imposing new mandates on a city. So I hope that you might float that idea. It might drop like a rock, but at least float the idea and see if there's any support to incentivize cities by showing at a city you're doing a good job, so therefore we don't think that this particular piece of legislation is applicable to your efforts. Thank you.
Yeah, Mayor, Councilmember Clark, noted. We appreciate that, so we'll take that back. Also, just to be clear to the City Council, this is more than just homelessness. This is a public nuisance draft, and so there's going to be challenges as well with, we have very active and strong relationships with our neighboring cities, but we border our neighboring cities. So what happens if there's an issue or a complaint on the other side of our city boundaries and that comes to us? What happens if there are motor vehicles that are, have the spoilers on the back of their vehicles and they're making noise at 3 o'clock in the morning and the residents say we're responsible for stopping them? We've been trying that for a decade, longer. So it's going to be more than just homelessness.
Okay. I don't see any other questions. Thank you. Ms. Bauer, item 3.
Council item of special interest, call to the public.
Mayor, council members, here to provide the item number 3 for today's agenda is Ryan Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor and Council. We're here to respond to the council item of special interest and provide you with an update. This council item of special interest for the call to the public, there's 3 areas that we are seeking to address. The first one is currently there's a time limit of 3 minutes with no option for extension, which has prohibited citizens from completing their remarks. The second issue that we're trying to address is cities nationwide are beginning to experience individuals actively testing the limits of the standard rules and regulations for public speaking. Also, we can't control the conduct of the individual speaking, and we currently broadcast or stream our meetings without any filters or delays. Currently, we address the public comments both in our charter and in state law. So you'll see that under our charter, section 13, city council meetings open to the public. The council shall meet regularly at such time and at such place as may be prescribed by its rules, but not less frequently than 2 times each month. All meetings of the council shall be open to public and shall be in compliance with the provisions of the laws of the state pertaining to public meetings and proceedings. And then state law shows that Arizona Revised Statutes 38-431 outlines the law of public meetings referred to as open meeting laws. The open meeting law requires that all meetings of any body, public body, shall be public meetings, and all persons so desiring shall be permitted to attend and listen to the deliberations and proceedings. The Attorney General for Arizona has granted several opinions, and while the open meeting law grants members of the public an absolute right to attend public meetings, the open meeting law neither requires nor prohibits participation by the public in the discussion and deliberations of a public body. The public has rights to attend, listen, videotape, and record these meetings. The state statute does not provide the public the right to speak or disrupt our meetings. So currently our public participation process in our workshops, we do not provide public comment on the agenda items, and there's no call to the public on non-agenda items, noting that we do not take action, formal action in our workshops. In our regular meetings, we allow public comment, in our voting meetings, I'd like to say for the public, our evening voting meetings, we allow public comments on items on the agenda, and we provide 3 minutes. We also provide 3 minutes for public hearing items on land development actions and allow public comments on items that are not on the agenda. So as we continue to discuss the call to the public, the rules and restrictions on public comments, public challenging restrictions in other cities. We've seen in other cities, notably a neighboring city where an individual went and spoke in the public meeting. It was that individual's right to speak, but there was a challenge and eventually a lawsuit on that, and resulting in changes. There's also restrictions on time. So speakers are regularly asked to end their remarks because their allotted 3 minutes have expired, and there's little flexibility for time extension. And then another challenge that we face is that the channels are not tagged. Our Channel 11 Facebook page, YouTube broadcasts are open to the public, unfiltered, and there's no time delay. And so what is said in these meetings or what actions are taken in these meetings are available to the public with no ability to cut off or delay those comments. And so the recommendation to the City Council is to create a new meeting titled the City Council Citizens Forum. The Citizen Forums are separate noticed meetings held after the conclusion of each regular City Council voting meeting and any additional meetings as needed. This City Council Citizens Forum would allow citizens to raise matters of concerns to the City of Glendale regarding our government, and community members may present their ideas, questions, or concerns to the City Council. This City Council Citizens Forum would be made up of the mayor or their designee. The mayor shall preserve order and enforce the rules of decorum, and the city manager, city attorney, city clerk, or their designees shall attend this forum. The guidelines for the forum are as follows. We propose that the meetings will be posted online with a 6 p.m. start time or the adjournment of the voting meeting if it goes beyond 6 p.m. Now, if we post it for 6 p.m. and our meeting ends at 5:45, our voting meeting, we would then wait until 6 o'clock so that the public is able to arrive and participate in the meeting as advertised. Per state statute, the City Council will not answer questions, consider motions, or take other actions during the citizens' forums. Per state law, council members can respond to criticisms directed at them individually. And then during the citizens' forum, members of the public may provide comments for the City Council's consideration. Public comments are encouraged to follow the following criteria. The topic should relate to subject matters under the jurisdiction of the city, and speakers should address the City Council when speaking, not the audience. And so now, as we continue through the recommendation, there's other ways to address the City Council that we want to make sure we're continuing to encourage the public. While Citizen Forum allows residents to address the City Council in person, anyone can contact their Glendale City Council member at any point. If you have any questions or concerns you want to discuss with the district council member, we encourage our residents to call 623-930-2249 or contact our council members via the council website. The public may also fill out a speaker card to speak at the council meetings on any item that's formally on the agenda. Mayor and council, if we seek your receive your consensus today, we will adopt a resolution. We'll ask the council to adopt a resolution at the voting meeting this evening, amending the City Council meetings and rules and procedures, including the order of business, where we would remove call to the public before adjournment. And then we would schedule citizens forums directly after adjournment of all future business meetings. We would place this information online about the citizens forum so it's properly advertised, and we would use market and advertisement materials to inform the citizens of this opportunity to engage with their elected officials. And with that, Mayor and council members, we stand for questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Bailey, is the city responsible or liable for any profanity that a resident would use at the podium?
Mayor and council, I guess are they responsible? If, to the extent, are we responsible? No, we can't control that, but I guess, are you asking if, is it related to what they say, or is it related to how we broadcast it, or what is that related to?
Well, I mean, I'm getting from this that we have no control over what somebody says, and we don't have a filter, and we don't have a delay. I mean, couldn't we just, I mean, when we broadcast the meeting, when the citizens' comments just say that this is free speech, unfiltered, unedited free speech, and that some of this might be offensive, and that not to, not let people do it. But I mean, we've actually had people use profanity in here. I can remember one time specifically at the podium, and nothing happened. I mean, so I was just curious that if that's what everybody's worried about, I wanted to know what responsibility that we have when it's a call to the public and they come to the podium, and if they use, obviously there's some things you can't do. You can't make threats and other things like that, but I mean, I occasionally use profanity. I wouldn't do it at the podium, but I'm just wondering what exactly, first of all, what exactly are we trying to fix and what are we trying to prevent? But if somebody uses profanity at the podium, would somebody else who watched it on a live stream be able to take any legal action against the city is what I want to know.
Mayor and council, I'm always in a difficult position to provide a legal opinion that would be advising somebody to take legal action against the city. So I think in terms of my comments, the challenge that we're faced with as a city is that profanity is generally not the issue. It's obscenity, it's threats, it's political statements, and that sort of order. And the responsibility, I'm not sure is a direct responsibility to an individual, more so than it is a civil responsibility to not allow obscenity that would run contrary to the prurient interests, and that's what the Supreme Court uses with regard to obscenity, to let that be disseminated across the city. So I think from a practical sense in navigating that becomes very difficult, because the Supreme Court has also said is what is obscene is it's a meandering line. So to your question, I can't give you any direct yes or no answer to it, so I'm sorry, but is there an element of responsibility that the city would have in that regard? Yes. Does that arise to the context of monetary damages? Off the top of my head, I'm unaware of that.
Well, I wasn't asking about monetary damages, Mayor, if I could continue. And I've seen other places where they broadcast videos and they say, there's a warning saying, some of this content may be offensive, and that you warn people if you proceed, and we could do that before the citizens' comments, that we don't have any control over what somebody comes to the podium and say, and they could offend somebody by saying something else without using profanity. I mean, people can often be offended unintentionally. So I'm just curious what it is we're trying to fix. And I did want to say that I know that at least I got the idea that this was a result of something that happened in another West Valley city. And that West Valley city, all they did, because I've spoken to the elected officials in that city, all they've done is remove the rule prohibiting speakers from criticizing city employees. That's it. That's all they did. They did not change anything else they're doing. They actually had a citizen arrested, trespassed in their chambers, and that's the only change they made. So, and the last thing I want to say is that in 2 weeks we're going to be seating two new council members, and I believe that decision should be left up to the new body and not this body. Thank you.
Mr. Lee, are there any other cities that are currently doing what's proposed here?
Mayor, council members, I'm not aware of cities that are doing this. No.
Okay, the reason I asked is I thought that Phoenix had something similar.
Mayor, council members, when I reviewed the city of Phoenix meetings, I didn't see a specific change in how they did that. They still gavel. They're staying within their public meeting. They're taking citizens' comments at the end of that public meeting without gaveling out and ending that meeting. Now, if there's specific policy behind that, I'm unaware, but in watching those meetings,
No, that wasn't my question. My question is, I thought that Phoenix was doing something like that. I wasn't sure. That's why I was asking you. Okay. Questions? Go ahead.
over the past couple years, it seems it's made national news headlines where people just take extreme measures to get a point across that they want to at any podium, whether it's a school district meeting or a city council meeting. And you don't know what's going to happen until, unfortunately, sometimes it's too late. I remember being at a school district meeting about 15, 16 years ago, and there was a gentleman came, and he lived within the district boundaries and stuff. And he was complaining about how we're not teaching the kids what they need to learn, and you're not teaching them math, reading, writing, arithmetic. He was very, very precise when he was talking about detail, and and then he gets into detail about how teenage pregnancy is on the rise, and these young girls and boys are wearing these things. They're just crazy, and and then he brings out a wire hanger, and the president of the school board said, before you go any further, there are children about to do a singing presentation seated right there. Be very mindful and careful about what you're going to say next. And that gentleman looked at the part, he goes, I'm following the rules. I'm not cussing. I'm not saying this. I'm not saying that. But it was very clear how he was speaking before what he was going to be describing next with a wire hanger. And luckily, the school board president made a decision to stop him. Now, was that person within the rules? Yeah, they were. Was it going to be something very, very, very ugly for those kids to have those conversations with and these are like little kids. These aren't like 7th grade, 8th graders. These were like 1st and 2nd graders. And that was just absolutely just horrifying, because there was nothing anybody could do or felt they could do. And that was like 15 years ago. There have been other times where we've seen in the past 5 or 6 years, I'm going to say, where things have been but are getting out of control at these meetings. They're playing for the camera, they're playing for the attention, they're playing for the hits on the social media platforms and stuff like that. They're whatever it is whatever it is, and it's too late. You can't stop it. It's already there. I think there's a time and a place for that kind of behavior, and that's on your own platform. That's in your own private privacy of your own home, saying and doing whatever you want to say and doing whatever platform you want. Go for it. Before I got on the council, I'm 100% for free speech, but I'm also 100% of decorum, responsibility, making sure you're not being insensitive to who's listening, because quite frankly, there's a lot of people listening, and if you're going to be insensitive to what other people are, listening and hearing you say because you don't care, I think this is a step this possibly could be a step in the right direction, where once something is said, you can't unsay it, and it could be rehashing old wounds about somebody, they'd finally gotten past a very, very personal tragedy, and then finally someone came up and said something at the podium or any podium, and they just reopened that wound, and that's something that the council will look at as we allowed that to happen, and we will be hearing about those complaints that'll be coming forward in those kinds of situations. I don't mind being criticized. I don't mind being called out publicly. I enjoy, let me phrase it, I don't enjoy. I have no problem participating in an uncomfortable conversation with anybody, as long as we're professional, polite, courteous, because I'd rather have uncomfortable conversations before we have an emergency, before we have a situation on our hands. Some people are refusing to have those uncomfortable conversations because they don't want to hear the details of the bigger picture or the whole of all the details, and they want to get their point across, and they want to make sure it's as ugly and one-sided as possible to make their opinion known, and that I don't think that's right. I do understand, and I kind of agree with Councilmember Tomachov's comment about what legal or financial penalty do we have, and I would imagine that would have to be if somebody sent an FCC complaint that City Council allowed John Doe to come to the podium, and every other word was F-bomb, and it was sent out, and we let it happen. And if somebody sent an FCC complaint, I imagine that would be when we didn't turn the switch off. We allowed them to keep on doing that, and their children were at home. I imagine that may be part of the discussion with what Councilmember Tomachoff brought up, and I wouldn't want that either, because as with any municipality, I mean, if that's one way they can get back at them, then they're going to, and that's just silly. That's absolutely silly. So I would like to know, though, if there are any more cities or towns across besides Arizona that are doing this currently, because that's important, and when did they initiate it and why? I'd like to know that, if that's able to get answered.
Thank you, Mayor. So I've had a chance to do some thinking about this, and believe it or not, I've had a fair amount of input from residents as well on this subject. So I'm going to take a few minutes and run through some of the concerns that either I have or that have been shared with me. And being provided with this PowerPoint that identifies the 3 concerns that we're supposedly trying to address. Number one is that the time limit of 3 minutes has kept citizens from completing their remarks. Well, that 3-minute rule is our rule. We could give them 5 minutes if we wanted to. We could say, if you're speaking for others and their names are listed on this sheet, their card, and they're present, you could have 2 minutes for each person you're speaking on behalf of, therefore reducing the number of commenters and kind of consolidating their ideas better. We could do something like that. But again, the 3-minute rule is our rule. If we want to give them 4 minutes, 4 minutes and 3 seconds, that's up to us what we give them. That's our policy. Cities nationwide are beginning to experience individuals testing the limits. Well, that's an interesting assertion, but there's no evidence here for it. There's no list of articles that we could go to see what's actually happening there. We have a one-off in Surprise, and we have an example from 15 years ago. But I don't think that there's a pandemic of people going to public microphones during official meetings and using foul language. And again, well, then the next point is we can't control the conduct of the individual speaking, and we currently broadcast or stream them without filters or delays. So that kind of raises 2 issues in my mind, and one is we're not solving the problem unless we don't allow public comments during agenda items or public hearings, because they can use just the very same language when they have the microphone at those times. Now, I understand state law requires us to allow the public to speak at public hearings, but we're not fixing the problem if we're only taking care of it for the final end of our meeting, which is, you know, people that stay until the end of our meeting to listen to citizen comments, I think they probably already understand that this is free speech, unbridled. We have some guidelines that we request. I think Councilmember Tomachoff's suggestion that we run a crawl across the bottom of the screen, or the mayor, instead of telling them what they can and can't do, just inform the public watching that, you know, this is free speech at its finest, people exercising their First Amendment rights, and, you know, it's up to you whether you want to continue or, you know, or not, and go that route. The Channel 11 was covered. Oh, also on the comments, and that we're broadcasting them just raw. And Mr. Bailey, this might be a question for you. Hate to put you on the spot, but could the mayor not direct, once a member speaking at the podium has used foul language, could the mayor not direct that the microphone be cut, so that only those in the room would be exposed to any further foul language, and that it wouldn't be broadcast into living rooms or, you know, across our fair city? So, you know, that would be another option we could consider without going to a separate meeting. I notice in the recommendations now that the mayor has the opportunity to designate someone to attend in his stead, which under normal circumstances I think would be the vice mayor's job. If the mayor's not available, the vice mayor serves. But that's not what this says. It just allows them, the mayor or their designee. Doesn't even honestly say that it has to be a council member. The manager, the city attorney, and the clerk all have the opportunity to provide designees to sit in their place. And that might be the very people that need to hear firsthand what the community is concerned about, and not their designee. And nowhere in here does it require that the council attend. So how good is that? And you know, if the council members aren't there to hear from the residents themselves. And I thought at first that there might be a benefit to this if in the forum afterwards, council had the opportunity to speak more freely with the residents, like if they're concerned about an issue and their concern is based on a misunderstanding or a misconception, if the council could in a forum, you know, explain that might resolve their concern. But we're still going to be bound by the regular open meeting laws that apply in our voting meetings anyway. So we're not going to be able to have that back and forth. And I think that was the only value I could see in doing this after the meeting. It has the potential also of extending the day for our employees, that either those up here on the dais with us or even staff from departments, because quite often during citizen comments that are held during our meeting, if a citizen has a concern that relates to a specific department, quite often I see that department head or somebody from that department touching bases with them after they've spoken and either explaining the situation or getting a phone number so they can call back and do some research and work with them. So if we value that kind of interaction, then those people are going to have to stay till 6 o'clock or later, even if we have a short meeting. And I don't know that that's necessarily fair to them. I am also concerned that we're rushing this through. The council has expressed, at least a few of us, our dislike for things being presented in workshop and voted that evening. And we understand that if there's an emergency, that yes, that needs to be done. But clearly this is not an emergency. And it should be presented in workshop and voted at a future date so that we have time to mull it over and the public has time to mull it over too. The only reason I can see that this is being rushed through on short notice is because we have 2 council members leaving. And that's not fair to the future council to be bound by the parameters that 2 council members that only have 1 meeting left, and that meeting probably won't have a public forum after it because it's followed by the swearing-in ceremony, and I'm sure we wouldn't want a public forum to last until 8 or 9 o'clock at night when we're trying to swear in members. So I suspect that wouldn't happen there. So we're just rushing this through for somebody's benefit. There's somebody in this room does not like to be criticized in public and certainly doesn't like it to be broadcast and to be memorialized for people to see in the future. And then the real dicey part of it to me is that even though our charter was quoted a few minutes ago, I feel like the pertinent part of the charter was skipped. And I don't think there's a way to get around this. Section 13, which was quoted, says that council meetings are open to the public. But Section 18 says, any citizen of the city may appear before the council at any regular meeting and present a request. The council shall take action or direct that action be taken. Doesn't say we have to follow the request. We just have to act or direct that action be taken in regards to that request within 30 days. Now, I've done this myself on a couple of issues. One was the residential chickens, and the other was citizens came and requested traffic signal light at 63rd and Northern, and because they did what the charter asked for, I followed through, the city followed through, and yes, now there is one. We did a study that showed that there needed to be one there. But if our charter says that any citizen of the city may appear before the council at any regular meeting and present a request, and we can only consider things that are on the agenda, then we have to have somewhere on the agenda in which citizens can do this, or we're out of compliance, in my opinion, with our charter. So even if we move council comments or citizen comments off, we'll still have to then provide something that says citizen requests. And any citizen can come and make a request that sounds a whole lot more like a comment. And if they choose to, they can use foul language. But again, the only time I've heard foul language used in this chamber from the podium or elsewhere was when a citizen was repeating what the mayor had said to them after an altercation in a publicly owned parking garage. And I don't think that's what the issue is here, but that's how seldom it occurs. And we're all open to criticism, whether we're elected or whether we're appointed, whether we make $34,000 a year or we make $340,000 a year. We're all susceptible to criticism. It's part of our job. And if we can't stand the heat, we should get out of the kitchen. And then I also had citizens raise a concern with me, and the question was asked, where else does this happen? And the other place it happens is in Tacoma, Washington. And this looks like a boilerplate of the Tacoma method. And I don't think that we need to go to Tacoma to find out how to run our meetings or interact with our citizens. But if somebody likes that model so much, then maybe they can go to Tacoma and live under it. But our citizens, based on what they've told me, don't want to live under this proposed resolution. Thank you, Mayor.
Ms. Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. I took notes because there's so much that I want to say. I received a couple of emails from people who were hysterical that they were under the impression that citizen comments would be removed entirely. I don't know where they got that information, but that's incorrect. Couple of things I want to say. When I first heard about this, I wasn't sure whether it was a good idea or not. But the more I've thought about it, the more I think that it is a good idea. And I'm going to tell you why. This, first of all, we all support free speech. So it's not a question of eliminating a citizen's right to speak freely. That would still exist under this proposal. It does not control content that a citizen speaks. That content right would still be allowed under this proposal. Now, when citizen comments were originally created about allowing citizens to speak about items that were not on the agenda, the original intent was to give that citizen an opportunity to speak directly to council. And I remember when it was used for things like a citizen would come in and complain about a road in their area being in poor condition, having potholes, or a neighbor's property that was unkempt. But it was a concern that citizen had, excuse me, about how things were operating in the city. Over time, it's morphed, and it's no longer being used that way. And why is it not being used that way? Because it's being televised. That's the elephant in the room, and that's really the only difference in this proposal. It's removing the opportunity to televise, because minutes will still be taken of the comments. Now, what this opportunity to televise has become, it's become a vehicle for people's political agendas, not for concern about something happening in their city, but because they have a political agenda. Oftentimes, it's somebody who wants to build a following, a political following, perhaps for a future city council run. It's been changed and denigrated and no longer has the meaning that was originally created for. So I think that taking away the televised portion, I mean, what's going to happen? What's really going to change? The mayor's going to gavel the public meeting closed, then he's immediately going to gavel open the citizen comment public forum. That'll take 30 seconds. So instead of him saying, we will now go to public comment, he will say, this meeting is closed. I now open the citizen forum. So the only change is the fact that it will not be televised. And this televised element, as I said, has become an attractant to people who have agendas totally unrelated to, in some cases, issues with the city. I do support increasing the time, however, and I know that there are some on council who don't, but I think if we're going to go into a public forum setting such as this, that people ought to be granted more time to speak. And I think that should be increased to 5 minutes. If you can't say it in 5 minutes, then you haven't been thinking about it long enough to get your comments in a succinct form. I think some people are ginning this up. It's much ado about nothing. The change is minimal. The only substantive change is that it will no longer be televised. That's it. You're still allowed to say whatever you want about any one of us, about senior management, about how the city's run. You just won't be televised when you say it. So, based upon thinking about this a long time, I'm going to support this resolution tonight, and I would hope my fellow council members would as well. Thank you.
Yeah, hold on one second. Mr. Melner, did you have anything to say?
Yes. Thank you. You know, I've thought about this for quite some time as well. The one thing I'd like to ask Mr. Bailey, the comment was made regarding the charter, which is concerning to me, regarding the public comments that are being that per the charter are allowed. Can you comment on that, Mr. Bailey?
Mayor and council, with regard to the charter provides that there will be the forum within which the public will have the opportunity to speak to the council. The forum is not being eliminated. The forum is being changed to a different forum.
So there would be no violation of the charter.
So long as the council ensures that there will be a meeting that's the citizen, whatever it's entitled, that will provide the opportunity for the public to speak to the council in the context of a call to the public, I believe that's compliant with our charter.
Okay. Thank you. The next question I have, and I think Councilmember Clark and Valdenegro kind of went over some things that I kind of agree with. The one thing I'd like to bring up is the issue that both Valdenegro and Clark referred to was the public forum. And I have seen this happen where it has become of people to use it just to promote their own thoughts or ideas, and not necessarily because they have concerns specifically with the council that they'd like us to address, though it may be part of that. That seems to be beyond that. So my question would be, would it be possible to not record the, if we left it as is, public comments at the end of the meeting, simply not record that portion of the meeting and broadcast it?
Who is your question to?
Mr. Bailey or Kevin Phelps or whoever else might be able to answer that question.
Mayor and council, off the top of my head, the Arizona Open Meeting Law provides that it needs to be a public meeting. It has no regulation as it relates to broadcasting it. And so, and again, I'd like to look a little deeper into it, but my initial reaction is that the Arizona Open Meeting Law does not require a meeting to be broadcast. So to the extent that during a section of the meeting that the cameras were turned off, my initial reaction is that would not be a violation of the open meeting law, noting, of course, that the meeting would still remain an open meeting. The caveat that I have with that is if the meeting was actually an online meeting or a streaming meeting and it was only an online or a streaming meeting, that would not work. So kind of when we were in COVID where everything was online, that wouldn't work as well. But that's my kind of my initial response, but I, you know, I do want to dig deeper into that as well.
Okay. All right, thank you. Well, again, one of my concerns is very frankly what has been brought up by a couple of council members. Additional time at the discretion of the mayor, I think, is appropriate. If there's only one person that needs a little extra time, you know, you could say you get 3 minutes. I'll allow a little extra if you need a little extra time. I think that would be appropriate. And I'm just wondering if maybe we could compromise here and leave the public comments where they're at and simply not record them, because that seems to be, at least from what I've heard, one of the concerns, and go from there. So just like to have some discussion about that.
Okay. Mr. Hugh.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm the one that brought this up originally, and I'm glad it's a lot of discussion taking place. What I just started out with before, you know, we had citizens, and it's happened throughout the 12 years I've been back on the council, that just run out of time. And I was talking to the mayor about it and asked, well, why can't we, you know, come up with a new plan and call on people? And actually, I thought saying call to the public would encourage more people who wanted to speak would come on down. And I was in favor of 5 minutes instead of 3. But I see the chair has the opportunity that they can expand that beyond the 5 minutes even if they choose to, and allow somebody to speak. And I think that's a positive note also. But although I'm still a council member and Joyce Clark is, we still have the ability to vote. And I don't like comments that we're rushing this through just because we might be in favor or not in favor of it. But and I appreciate the presentation. I'm still in favor of this. I think it'd be a nice step and a nice change.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a question though, because we have an established policy for council items of special interest, and we've spent multiple different workshops on working on how council items of special interest. So I'm a little curious, because this was asked for as an item of special interest at the last council meeting. There was never a consensus to get it on the agenda. I understand there's no cost to it, but there was an exception made on how this was handled as a council item of special interest, and I just wanted to point that out. So this could have still been done the normal process, and it would have been brought back for a consensus whenever it was brought back for a consensus, whoever was seated at this dais at that time. But there was an exception made, and I just wanted to make that clear that I'm not the only one that is aware that there was an exception. I don't know who made the exception. I plan to find out who made the exception. But we have a policy in place on how we do council items of special interest, and there shouldn't be, unless there's exceptions made, I'd like to have a list of the rules when the exceptions are made to the rule then, if that's what we're going to do, if that's how we're going to do it. Maybe we need to bring the council item of special interest back and discuss when are we going to make exceptions to the rule. But we have a policy, and we did not follow it. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Want to address a couple of things, as you might expect. Extending the speaking time at the option of the chair, that just doesn't seem fair to people who've already spoken or who may come next and only get 3 minutes or 2 minutes when somebody else got 5. It just doesn't seem right. You know, it gives not that our chair would do it, but it gives the chair the option of letting people that they agree with speak longer, and people they don't just have to stick to the limit. And we're not entirely rigorous about that 5 minutes. We don't always cut people off. Our chair doesn't generally let it go too much longer than the time that's allotted for speaking, but it does happen, and it very rarely is disconcerting. But making it an official part of it just doesn't seem fair to the other speakers that have taken just as much time out of their day to come down and speak to the council and maybe have been more studious and succinct in their thoughts. Also the concern, I hate to disagree with our attorney, because I think he always is giving us good advice, and I realize I put him on the spot and he hasn't had time to deeply consider this, but I just want to repeat what our charter says. Any citizen of the city may appear before the council at any regular meeting and present a request. So if all of a sudden we're going to decide that our voting meetings aren't regular meetings, even though they've been described like that in our upcoming agenda items and all of that for who knows how long, as long as I've been on the council, as regular meetings. Unless we're going to decide that our voting meetings aren't regular meetings, then why shouldn't a citizen be able to appear at a regular meeting and make a request in accordance with our charter? It doesn't say that we can set aside a certain meeting for it. That's not what the charter says. It says at any regular meeting. And so I still think that it's contrary to the charter, and I would find it contrary to my oath of office to support this. I had one other, but I forget it. I've said plenty. I think you know where I stand, and I think I've given you plenty of reasons to, if not change your minds on this, but at least to continue thinking about it. And that, I know what it was. I was also going to agree with Councilmember Tomachoff about how this has been handled as an exception to the way we do council items of special interest. There has been taxpayer money invested in it because it isn't simply coming to us and asking us, do we want to go down this road? Staff has put effort into creating the ideas behind it and the PowerPoint and all of that. So this isn't just a scoping workshop item. This is a discussion on the item, and that's not in our regular order. I object to it being considered tonight for that reason and others, and Mr. Bailey has also said that he had some legal aspect of this that he might want to research. I think that there is no emergency here, folks. There's no emergency here. We can work this out over the next few meetings if we need to, and see what rules this council wants to live under and what we expect our residents to put up with. Thank you.
All right. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Bailey, I got a question based on Mr. Turner's comment, where any member of the public can ask for or can make a request. And to your example, you said, well, any request can then become by extension, a comment. I'm not trying to split hairs here, but can someone explain to me, or if Mr. Turner can, when a citizen can come in and make a request, just so I know exactly what that means, as opposed to make a comment. I'm just curious on
that. Mayor, Councilmember Bondenegro, I think from a practical sense is that it's when a citizen is requesting For example, somebody wants a mid-arterial stop sign, and they would not know where to go. They could come before the council. They could say, I would like a mid-arterial stop sign. The council can't do anything about it, but the charter speaks to that there will be somebody directed by the council. And when I say that, that's taking into consideration the open meeting law. Somebody would respond to them within that time frame. So to the extent that somebody came in and said X, and then the council said, Michael, go talk to them, and I go talk to them, I believe that's responsive. So there's that. If I may, since I have the floor, just really quickly, Julie and I have been talking here as well, and it's the clerk and I have been talking. A couple of things. One is to remind everybody that the minutes will have to be, we will continue to take minutes if the television is cut off in that regard, and there may be a recording of it based on mechanically how we figure out how to do the minutes for that. That's my first point that I just want to remind you. And then the second is that with regard to public forums, there's time, place, manner restrictions. And with regard to the time, my recommendation is if you want to extend the time, you extend the time to everybody. There's one element of it is that from a concept of time, place, manner restrictions, they need to be applied uniformly. And so to the extent that there may be seconds that are provided to somebody that just needs to close their thought, that's generally not a problem. But to the extent that it became a practice where somebody was given 3 minutes and then later somebody was given 5 or somebody was later 10, that creates a problem in that regard. Noting we have not had that problem historically. Mayor, you've done an excellent job with that, but I just wanted to make sure you understood that moving forward.
Okay.
So, Mayor, I was going to respond to the council member's question as well.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, we're not running out of time. We
Go
have
ahead.
all day. So it seems to me, well, first off, to comply with the charter, we would have to have an agendized, I think, an agendized line on all of our regular meeting agendas for requests from the public. Not now call to the public, but requests from the public. Other words, they wouldn't be able to come and make a request because they're not on the agenda, and that would be a violation of the open meeting law. And then if they come up here and desire to explain to us what their request is about, rather than just walk up to the podium and say, I think we need a stop sign at the corner of, 57th and Glen, and then sit down. I mean, they may want to say why, experience the incident that makes them feel that way or whatever. But then, so it's not just as simple as a request. It becomes a comment. And then additionally, if their request is something like, don't move the library, then they've got 3 minutes, is it, to talk about why they don't think the library ought to be moved as they make their request. It doesn't solve any of these problems. This does not solve any of these problems other than to get the camera off of us and our staff. That's all it solves. And I don't think that's in the best interest of us. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Go ahead.
Thank you. I just want, and I saw this happen at the federal level, and I thought it was just absolutely disgusting, and I don't want it to happen here in our level, where there's a situation where a president was going to appoint a Supreme Court justice, and they said nope, because we might be having somebody else come in a little bit later, and we're going to wait until we get that president in. So they waited, and then the opportunity came for the next president, and it was very close to the end of that presidency, and said, we should probably wait. Nope, we're going to do it right now, because it says we need to do it right now. Now, I'm not saying that Council Member Tomachoff or anybody in this council would ever do that, but I'm going to speak up very loudly if it ever gets to that point, because that would be really, really bad if we did that, where if we say, no, we should wait until the new members come on, and the next time in however long, 18 months, comes up again, that's going to be offensive, that if anybody were to take the opposite of that side. I'm not saying Councilmember Tomachoff or anybody would, but it would be really offensive to anybody watching out there as well, that I believe that consistency is paramount, but I mean, but I also understand open communication about everything is also. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to ask for a consensus. Is there a
Mayor, I'd
consensus?
like to respond to that if I could, just to clear the point I was making, is that these proposed changes are what a different council is going to be operating under. That's why I said I felt like the decision should be made. This exact body that's sitting here would not be the body that's operating under these conditions. And that's the point I was making, is that the decision should be made by the people who are going to be operating under these parameters. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mayor, to that point, I would like to add for the council member, I agree with you that the things we do should be taken in regular order. This is the exception to regular order. Regular order doesn't mean that it comes up at the very next meeting and it's workshopped in the afternoon and voted for at night. That's the exception to regular order that you object to, and I agree with your objection. This should follow regular order and take the normal time and the normal, the next step would be a consensus. Do we want staff to come back? Do we want to provide public input for this change? All of those things. And it would be voted on at some point in the future. So if you object to taking things out of regular order, I would like to encourage you to object to this. Thank you.
Mr. Melner, I'm asking for consensus. Are you opposed or in support?
I would like to propose that we keep our agenda the same as it is and simply not record it. I'd like to see if we have consensus to do that.
Record it what?
He's talking about
Record the public comments.
Right.
Or, as was stated, the minutes may be recorded, there may be a physical recording, but not televised, I guess, is what would be the comment.
Yeah,
May I ask him a question about that?
Go ahead.
Do you mean not televise it live or not televise it ever, to where the public could never get the video version of the actual meeting, that part of the meeting?
Not televise it, period. Perhaps record it and have the recording available, just like many of our other meetings are, but not televise it. Because that seems to me to be the number one reason why we want to do this, is to prevent potential problems in the future due to that.
Mayor?
Go ahead.
I could live with that because my objection has been the televising of it creates an attractive nuisance and an incentive that is not necessarily healthy. So if we kept the agenda the way it was and simply stop televising when you adjourn or when everything but public comment has been made, I could live with that.
All right, let me see if I could maybe make this simpler for everybody. If we left the agenda exactly as it's been, except for when we finished our normal business meeting, we recess for 5 minutes, and after 5 minutes we come back with the portion to the public. We haven't changed anything other than we took a 5-minute break, and then we stopped the cameras at that point.
Why would we need to take a break?
Well,
and I'll remind you, as I recall, this
okay.
was the part that the attorney felt he might need to do some research on.
Yeah, again, my point is we're not eliminating the meeting, we're taking a break. Gives people that don't want to be here a chance to get up. The people that want to be here, they've got...
People come and go during our meetings all the time, Mayor.
Okay, so that's something that I'm putting out there. If that's not acceptable, then I'm looking for a consensus on the original. Go ahead.
I have one last question, if I may, and forgive me for not being completely up to speed with all the details. In a scenario I'm going to propose, I'm just asking if the current policy, or however you want to call it, is changed. Let's just say today it's voted on, it's changed. Can it be changed later?
We can always change.
Okay. That's all I want to know. Thank you.
Mayor?
Yeah, hold on. Hold on.
I don't understand the I mean, how often, most people who come here to the podium want to talk about issues that we're dealing with. For example, the most recent one that comes to mind is the Velma Teague Library. And I think that this flies in the face of the transparency that we owe the people who we work for. We work for the residents of Glendale. We owe them the transparency, and if somebody's coming here for political reasons, I think they can surmise that, but I think they have the right to hear other residents come and share their opinions about issues that the city is dealing with. 99, and I mean, I don't know, I wish we had more time to process this the way it's supposed to be, because I did just share, Councilmember Leandro is new to the council, the flow chart for the council items of special interest, was thrown in the trash today. We haven't had the time to actually get the data. What percentage of people do not come here to talk to us about a relevant issue that is happening in the city? And the transparency for other people to be able to see what's going on and what other residents are concerned about, thinking, oh, I have that concern too. Maybe I should be paying more attention. I just don't understand, and I thought Councilmember Turner made a very good point, is that the rest of the public comments on any agenda item are unfiltered and unedited, and people can make pretty much any point they want on anything that's on the agenda. As long as the premise of what they're talking about is on the agenda item. So I just don't understand. I don't think it's broken. I don't think it needs fixing. The city where this happened in basically just took out the rule that you cannot criticize staff. And, I mean, when you do this kind of work, you have to have thick skin, and people aren't always going to be happy with what you do, and they're not always going to like what you do. But I think this flies in the face of the transparency that we, as city council members representing the citizens of Glendale, should be operating under, and I will not support this. Thank you.
Mayor, thank you. Am I on?
You are.
Thank you. Okay. People can still make any comment they want, period. There is no attempt to muzzle free speech. Television is not transparency. Television is communication, yes, but it does not guarantee transparency in any form, shape, or fashion. Mayor, I think your suggestion of keeping it on the agenda but cutting off the television and the televising of citizen public comment is acceptable, and I could support that as well.
Mayor, I thought your suggestion was to keep the proposal the way it was. Did I misunderstand
That's
something?
not what I said.
What did you say?
What I said is the current situation that we do today, the only difference is when we finish our regular business meeting, before we go to the call for the public, take a 5-minute break, turn off the TVs, and then we're not losing any time other than a 5-minute break. And if we don't only have a couple people, we could go directly into that. But I'm just saying, we take a 5-minute break, we don't adjourn. We're accomplishing the initial goal. We're just, you want to say we're streamlining it? I don't know.
Could I ask what the initial goal was? What is the goal? I don't even know what the goal is. To not let people be heard? Is that what the goal is? That's how I see it.
Yeah, there's no way that this proposal limits anybody's ability to speak freely in an open,
no,
does not stop them from speaking freely in an open forum.
I agree with that.
Okay, at the same time, we're abiding by all the state laws, Arizona revised statutes, where this would not violate any of those. My concern is what Councilmember Turner brought up about a regular meeting. If we keep it in that same time zone, then we're addressing the concern that he had, and yet we're still getting the job done. That's all I was saying.
Mayor, the city attorney doesn't believe that there's a conflict that with the proposal. Apparently, that a regular meeting's not specific in the charter, but what it does is I'm not arguing that it doesn't meet the state laws. It probably does meet the state laws, but what it doesn't do is it doesn't provide the transparency to other residents that are not in the room to hear what other residents are coming before us to talk about. That's what it doesn't do.
Okay, but there are minutes that will be available in a recording too. We're not taking any of that away. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, it's been a long discussion, Mayor. I think that's a great, excuse me. I think that's a great compromise from other ideas, and I can go along with that.
Okay, so I guess I'm gonna ask for a consensus on my suggestion of not adjourning the meeting, taking a break, and then going into the public comments.
Yes.
You?
Yeah.
You good on it? Yeah. Okay. All right. Done.
You have consensus.
Thank you. City manager's report.
Mayor, members of council, I'll now provide my update. If the go ahead and roll the tape. Hello, I'm Kevin Phelps. Here's a quick update on some of the awesome things happening in our city. Our firefighters have a state-of-the-art burn tower to practice crucial life-saving skills. This Class A burn tower at the Glendale Regional Public Safety Training Center simulates real-world conditions, allowing firefighters to hone their skills in a safe environment. They used to have to travel to other cities to do this training, so having a facility locally will save time and resources. City of Glendale Engineering, Building Safety and Facilities all made this possible by helping with the purchase and construction of the building. Every day we're getting closer to seeing a rocking show, enjoying a delicious dinner, or lounging by crystal clear waters at Via Resort. I recently took a tour of the construction site, and I want to give you an inside look at the progress. Crews are hard at work on the 4 hotel towers spread across the property. We took a peek inside a model room that gives guests a prime view of the $40 million state-of-the-art stage. We also toured the underground tunnels inspired by Disneyland. They'll let staff zip around the property and give performing artists a secret route to the stage. Construction is also underway on luxury box seats, restaurants like this steakhouse, and fun shopping options. The resort is set for a phased opening in 2025. I can't wait to see it all come together. Field Operations is building up the next generation of city leaders with a mentorship program. 11 driven employees graduated from the Field Operations Organizational Development Program. For the past year, they've attended monthly informative sessions covering everything from department budgeting to interviewing skills to effective communication. These trainings help our team excel in their current jobs so they can boost their skills to prepare for future leadership roles. The final steel beam was installed at City Hall, marking a key milestone in the reconstruction project. Thank you to the Mayor and Council for adding a personal touch. Take a look.
Talk about these beam extensions or these fascia beams or edge beams. This is one of them.
Mayor, you go up first.
We also have some exciting updates on the reconstruction project. Well, I hope you've enjoyed these updates. More importantly, I hope you enjoy Thanksgiving, which is around the corner. Happy Thanksgiving. That concludes my report. Be glad to answer any questions.
Seeing none. City Attorney's report?
No report, but just a reminder, we do not have an executive session.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bailey. Council item special interest, Councilmember Baldenegger, have you any?
None at this time, sir.
Councilmember Clark?
Nothing today, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Melner, are you still there?
Yes, nothing today.
Thank you. Councilmember Tomachoff?
Nothing today.
Thank you. Councilmember Turner?
Yes, Mayor, I do have one today. As I think we're all aware, we've had tremendously hot and dry weather over the last many years. And residents have talked to me about the loss of trees across our community. And I would like for staff to prepare a report, if they can, please, for the number of trees we've lost over, say, the last 5 years, how many have been replaced, and in their place, any plans that have been executed already or that could be executed for helping us to not lose trees in the future, additional waterings and things like that. And I would also like to point out that Phoenix has just passed a measure to provide 27,000 new trees across their city, and I would like us to, as part of this, to have some information about us adopting a tree increase program throughout our city. We used to be a Tree City USA city. I don't suppose we are anymore, but I think for the sake of our residents and the cooling impact that trees have on our communities and our parks and our right-of-way, that we should do our part. So that's my request.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Nothing, Mayor.
Okay, and I have nothing. There is no executive session. With that being no further business before this council, this meeting is adjourned.